Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Let's talk about the superhero movie status of the 2000s. It's hard to believe it now, but back in the 2000s, superhero movies were not as well received or as big of a box office success as they are today with the likes of the MCU. I mean, you had films like the 2003 Hulk movie, Catwoman, and who could forget the Fantastic Four? There were some big ones here and there, like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and the X-Men films, but who would have thought that in the 2000s there would be a superhero movie that was not just well received, but was also a big box office hit and was produced by a big animation studio? May I remind you that the only animated superhero movie released in theaters at that time was Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which, while it was a critical success, it didn't do great financially, not on the level of the Batman films by Tim Burton. So Disney and Pixar 11 took them 11 years to make another animated superhero movie, and to direct it, they got Brad Bird, who did another critically acclaimed animated film, and one of the most iconic, The Iron Giant, released in 1999. So, did he give Pixar another hit with this one, or did it flop? Well, financially and critically, it was big and was said to live up to the other Pixar films. But what's my perspective? It's time to find out. This is The Incredibles. In this lauded Pixar animated film, married superheroes Mr. Incredible, voiced by Craig T. Nelson, and Elastigirl, voiced by Holly Hunter, are forced to assume mundane lives as Bob and Helen Parr, after all superpowered activities have been banned by the government. While Mr. Incredible loves his wife and kids, voiced by Sarah Vowell, Spencer Fox, and Eli Fusil, he longs to return to a life of adventure, and he gets a chance when summoned to an island to battle an out-of-control robot. Soon Mr. Incredible is in trouble, and it's up to his family to save him, as well as giving a really nice pose. I will not be able to tell you how much I adore this movie without going into some detail. I mean, seriously, this is on par with one of the best superhero movies in regards to political thrillers. The Dark Knight, released in 2008. The story's strong point has to be the writing and the execution of it. But you know me, it's in my nature. I had to talk about everything else this movie has to offer, so let's get to it. The characters are fantastic. Mr. Incredible is probably the most relatable character in this movie. I mean, he was in the cool club, being a superhero that everyone loved. Then he was forced underground and basically lost himself before getting out again and becoming the hero everyone remembers. As for Elastigirl, or Mrs. Incredible if you really don't care, which I do, so Elastigirl, she doesn't want to be a hero again, but when she's forced into it, she basically has no choice. Holly Hunter also sounds like a real stressed mother and supportive wife who eventually becomes a hero, and she gives a great performance here, as well as the sequel, but we'll get there when we get there. The kids act like actual kids, which is rare to come by now in movies, isn't it? Violet is an angsty teen struggling to find out who she is. I know what she's going through. Dash wants to use his power for self-gain, which was what a lot of kids want, but he does realize that he can use it for other good things. And Jack, I can't say much, but I can sum him up with this: expect the unexpected. Then we have Frozone, voiced by Sam Jackson, who has one funny line, which you already know, as well as other fun moments, such as the freezing of the cop and the final battle where he shows off his power. Then we have Edna Mode, who is voiced by the director Brad Bird, and she's just memorable. Her speech about not wearing capes I always remember. Mirage, despite not being in much of this movie, does give a memorable scene or two. As for our villain, we have Syndrome, and he is without a doubt Pixar's greatest villain. Jason Lee was in one memorable movie in the past, Mallrats, and had some appearances here and there in movies like Almost Famous and stuff like that. But in my humble opinion, Syndrome is his greatest role by far, and he gives one of the best villain monologues ever, even though the movie pokes fun at the monologuing villain trope earlier with one of the most quotable lines in the film. But Syndrome otherwise is a ruthless, evil, and by far amazing villain that should be an inspiration for other supervillains in other movies. Too bad this movie's own sequel couldn't live up to that. Sadness. Okay, that's enough babble on the characters. How's the animation? Well, like with most of Pixar's films, the animation here still holds up. This movie and Shrek 2, both released in 2004, are still the best looking movies that were animated in 2004, compared to disastrous animation like in Shark Tale, Garfield the movie, and possibly Polar Express, if you guys really hate it that much. As for the music, one of my all time favorite composers, Michael Giacchino, composed the soundtrack for this film. Specific tracks I love are the music when Mr. Incredible is battling the Omni Droid, Kronos Unveiled, and the end credits. They all have a jazzy flair to them, which is a style I love. And it's been a while, and since it's been a while, and this is a superhero movie with no original songs, I might as well talk about the action sequences. I mean, what the hell? They're astounding. The whole opening with all of the action is perfect way to open a superhero film. Other great scenes are, of course, the battle with the Omni Droid in the jungle, which is my favorite scene in the movie, the running scene with Dash, and the final climactic battle, which is still satisfying. So yeah, The Incredibles is yet another one of Pixar's best movies, and definitely in the top 3 of the Golden Age, which ends with this film. I'm going to give it the incredible ranking it deserves, a 10 out of 10. Relive the glory days with this classic. Well, that's it for this review. Feel free to leave your thoughts and comments on the movie below, and tune in next week when I take a look at Cars. With that said, my name is Mr. CTS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.